Today we are ranking the albums of Periphery, and we're starting with Periphery in 2010. Now, I'll always have a special place in my heart for this album, as I can vividly remember being at work and stumbling onto Icarus Lives when it debuted. I feel like I was at a time where I kind of dropped off on following new music, and that song just sort of reignited the passion for me. Plenty of bangers on here, starting with Insomnia, just djenting away at top speed. The Walk is a total rager and still a popular song live. Love Letter Experiment and All New Materials. Buttersnips has some pretty incredible riffing, as does the insane Seigel Rocks. And then, of course, there's the 15+ minute Race Car. Really fantastic, but I'll admit that within their own discography, it's on the lower end with weaker production, and both their songwriting and performance skills only get better from here. So yeah, it's a B, but just consider, as you see from my scale here, like, there are no bad albums in this discography. It's still one of my favorite albums of this entire decade, and that's the lowest on this list. Next up, we have Periphery 2. This time, it's Personal in 2012. So not only is every track on this album great, they're virtually all single-worthy. It takes everything that was good about the debut and makes it go like 10 times as hard and 100 times as emotionally resonant with both improved songwriting and production. This is the first record with Mark Holcomb and Adam Nolly Getgood in the lineup as well. Have a Blast has that great violin and synth intro before breaking into that breakneck riff that never fails to put a satisfied smile on my face. Scarlet is a fan favorite on the more melodic side, and one that was wonderful to see the entire crowd sing along to live. Then you've got the incredible 3-song run of Ragnarok, The Gods Must Be Crazy, and Make Total Destroy, which are all in my regular gym playlist rotation. And I also love the noodly tapping riff on Frogging Bullfresh. Masume is possibly my favorite closer of any of their albums, but my favorite track may very well be Mile Zero, which nearly brings me to tears every time I listen to it. Really incredible album and pretty damn engrossing, especially for an hour and nearly 10 minutes. One of their best, but I do think it gets slightly edged out by another album we'll get to later, so I'm putting this one at A tier. Then we had the double album Juggernaut, Alpha and Omega in 2015. Now, I actually hated this album when it originally came out. It just felt too poppy in places, and I'm curious in the comments if anyone felt the same way. Regardless, I love it now. Alpha's got some really catchy tunes on it, from the crushing MK Ultra to the more radio-friendly title track and Heavy Heart. Those latter tracks are definitely ones I've spent a lot of time belting out in my car during commutes. 22 Faces falls into that category as well, and then Omega is the darker side with tracks like The Bad Thing and especially Hell Below. The only issue I have, and this is with a lot of concept albums really, is that because of the story, the band is trying to fit in the music to build around that, so I feel like it can lead to some filler and downtime. Like with television and movies, watching the story is the point, so most of the scenes end up being important to the experience, but with an album, the purpose is mainly to just listen and enjoy the music. So if the plot isn't currently servicing a really great song, I check out a little bit. Fortunately, all the songs here are good, but I do personally find tracks like Stranger Things, Graveless, and Priestess much less something I want to revisit versus, say, a standalone banger like Rainbow Gravity. So to me, from a purely musical standpoint, I feel like this could be trimmed down into something even stronger, but no doubt still a really impressive undertaking. I'm going to put it at B+. Then we got Periphery 3 with Select Difficulty in 2016. Killer opening with the 1-2 punch of The Price is Wrong and Motormouth, loving the very Sixth-inspired guitars and infectious vocal cadences, not to mention the pure Meshuggah breakdown on the latter. Then Marigold goes full symphonic mode with the strings and neoclassical guitars for one of their most epic tracks to date. Remain Indoors alternatively has such a relaxing and hypnotic groove to it that it always puts me in a good mood. Flatline is another great counterbalance of super heavy parts with an insanely catchy chorus. I always feel like this one could have also been right at home on Alpha. Also love the funky thump of the bass on Catch Fire and the blissful closer Loon, which walks right up to the line of being saccharine without ever quite crossing over it. Really consistent. I was playing this one over and over again when it came out, and it's still just as good, if not better now, so I'm actually putting this one at S tier. Next up is Periphery 4, Hail Stan, 2019. This album just completely blew me away with both some of their heaviest and most progressive tracks to date. Like, there are complete ragers like Blood Eagle and Church Burner, which completely bring the house down, but they also made a ballsy move of opening with the nearly 17-minute opus that is Reptile, which I might add they played flawlessly live as well and features spoken word from Mikey of Sixth. I don't know many more mainstream acts that would make a choice like that, and I think that they could only do so now that they were completely free from any studio meddling since they had left Sumerian for their own 3-dot label. More great proggy fare like Garden in the Bones, and then in the midst of all of this, they also drop one of their softest tracks to date in It's Only Smiles, which is another one of my favorites with its impossible to not sing along to melodies reminding me quite a bit of like Coheed and Cambria. This really does once again feel like a culmination of everything that came before. I will say that the electronic beats of Crush didn't really do much for me this time around, leaning a bit too far into the tropes I hate about most popular metalcore right now, but I still think that they managed to do it better than anyone else. And then Satellites is just an okay closer. So really great, ambitious, I love all the experimentation, but it's maybe not as strong start to finish, so I'm putting this one at A-. And that brings us to Periphery 5, Djent is Not a Genre, in 2023. So with the release of Wildfire, it was clear that once again this album would continue to both lean into their most progressive side while also testing the limits of their aggression. I wasn't sure that they'd be able to top the heaviness of Blood Eagle, but Spencer goes so hard on this track, giving one of his best performances both in the harsh and melodic sections. Also, that little 2-3-4 drumstick click part is super hype, and as if the catchy chorus and chaotic Meshuggah-esque interlude weren't enough, they also dip into some smooth jazz complete with piano and saxophone. And then a classy, full symphonic outro, one of a few on this album. Mind you, that's just one song. This is followed by a tropos, which also demonstrates the full scope of their strengths, starting with some of their fluffiest, radio-worthy moments, but over 9 minutes slowly building into something completely different. At this point, we get a stretch of deeper cuts of slightly shorter lengths, Wax Wings being the longest and giving off some Scarlet vibes. Great atmosphere on this one. Everything is Fine mixes elements that remind me of Juggernaut while also getting the most overtly mathcore they have in a very long time. We're talking like near Dillinger Escape Plan levels of chaos in both the drums and guitars. While alternatively, Silhouette is another more experimental moment going full synth pop. It kind of reminds me of Greg Puciato's solo work, but they could take a few notes from him production-wise to make it a little less saccharine sounding. I don't hate it, but I think that this and Dying Star are going to be more divisive with the fan base, though the latter ballad also throws in some cool Animals as Leaders-esque proggy tapping around the middle. Which brings us back to another heavy single in Zagreus, once more wearing both its Meshuggah and Juggernaut influences on its sleeve. They even bust out some death metal growls on this one. And then we close with not one but two massive tracks in Dracul Gras and Thanks No Boo, these adding to over 25 minutes of progressive grandeur, though one could argue that they're slightly padded out with ambient elements. Definitely at least on par with Reptile, but also with their own surprising twists and turns to keep you guessing that I won't spoil here. Overall, I have to say again that these guys don't miss. Total banger album and one of the better ones I've heard this year so far. As for where it ranks in their own discography, I'd say it's similar to Periphery 4 in that the high points are some of their highest and most ambitious to date, but it's maybe not as consistent as an entire work. So I'm going to also put this one at A-. Y'all check out this playlist for more metalcore rankings, and let me know down in the comments how would you rank these albums maybe differently. Let's start a conversation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.